Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. Let's jump right into the content of the video. We are talking about a movie today, a Blu-ray. It's Visible Secret, Hell to the S. This is the Radiance Films release. If you know, this was limited to 2,000 copies worldwide. And it's not just that it's like the first edition and they're reprinting it, or it's different, there's this many copies in that region, 2,000 copies. That's it, worldwide. They're never making them again. Now, they are sold out on the Radiance Films website, but I did some research this morning and 3 different retailers that I found online still have copies of this in stock. So if you are interested in it, you can still get it, but I would recommend trying to get it as soon as you can because there's not that many left. The distributor, like I said, the label rather, doesn't even have any copies left. So you got to go and find retailers who have it still in stock. This film was released in 2001, in June of 2001. It's directed by An Hui, who probably is, I would imagine, is most famous for Boat People and the story of Wu Viet, and other like seminal films of the Hong Kong New Wave, like late 70s, early 1980s. It was written by Abe Kwong Man Wai, who I don't know too much about him, but I do know that he directed the sequel to this film, which he also wrote. This film was a financial success, and it was also a critical hit. And so it really helped apparently revive. Again, I don't know that much about An Hui's career, and I don't know a ton about this period in the Hong Kong film industry. And so the essays actually in the booklet here, the Dylan Chung essay in particular, was so helpful for me personally, contextualizing not only the career of the people involved and what was going on in the industry at the time, but also a lot of the cultural and historical context of this film, which is very, very important to what this movie is. So shout out to Dylan Chung for that, like genuinely phenomenal. Like that essay, as I was watching this movie, I was thinking there's a lot of context here. I obviously am just not grasping. That essay had all of that context in it. So I was like, okay, I get it now. Like I get what this movie is really about because now I have the context from this essay. So it's just, I cannot emphasize enough. If you get this release, read the essay, the Dylan Chung essay in particular. So good. Eason Chan is in this movie. Shu Qi is in this movie. Who's in Gorgeous with Jackie Chan and Viva Erotica and Millennium Mambo and a ton of other movies. But I think she's a great actor. I know that a lot of the discourse about her, especially with like dude cinephiles on Twitter, is how beautiful she is, and she is very beautiful. But more so to me, she's just like this phenomenal screen presence. She's very easy to like, and yet like in a classic movie star way, like you like her right away, and yet there's a lot of emotional depth to her that she often uses in surprising ways to kind of catch you off guard. And there were scenes in this movie where just like an expression from her, or one scene in particular where she hugs this person and just the expression on her face was like kind of heartbreaking but very beautiful at the same time. I just thought she was phenomenal in this movie. Sam Lee is in this film. He's in Biozombie, if I'm not mistaken. James Wong Jim, Kara Hui is in this movie. She's so good in this movie. And An Hui actually says in the she's got an interview on this release. An Hui, she talks about how working with Kara Hui was really amazing, and she brought a lot to the set because she had a lot of experience at that point in her career, and that was like right as her career was beginning to be revived. And she said she was like very patient, very thoughtful. She really studied the material. She knew her lines. She knew her character. She was helpful with like the other actors on set, like just like her joy to have on set. So let me tell you what this movie's about real quick, and then I will. Let me give you I'm going to give you like a quick 30-second if you don't want to watch like the whole, whatever, 15, 20 minute long video. Let me give you a quick impression of this film from me. Add a little caveat. And I'll tell you what it's about, I'll show off the release a little bit, and I'll get deeper into my thoughts. This movie really profoundly affected me emotionally. I also really enjoyed this movie as like an entertainment piece, like kind of spooky ghost movie for the Halloween season. And there's also a lot to think about in this movie. There's a lot of metaphors and there's a lot of layers to it. For all of those reasons, I really loved this movie. It was a phenomenal film. I will say that there are people who don't love this movie, and from what I'm understanding, it's people who they wanted to see like a fun, interesting, entertaining ghost film that would be like thematically rich or whatever, and that would be a typical kind of like mainstream film where it would ask questions and it would give you mysteries, and in the end it would provide answers that are logical and satisfying, and you can walk away thinking that was a good movie. I think a lot of people feel this movie falls apart in the end because of the way things are revealed. And I have read that other people felt like some of the reveals that end up coming towards the end, some of the answers to the mysteries are a little bit too obvious, and so they weren't as intriguing as they could have been. I will say that if you've seen a lot of films of this nature, there are certain aspects to the mystery that are obvious, for sure. What I thought was interesting is that even though some things about it are obvious, I was still guessing until the very end, because the why is very difficult to put your finger on. The what is happening aspect of this film is not super difficult to pinpoint. The why is it happening and how does it all connect? That was more intriguing to me, and that was, to me, did not seem like an obvious answer. I will also add that this is a very surreal film. So there's one scene in particular in this movie where there's like a dream within a dream, or like a hallucination within a hallucination, whatever you want to call it, right? There's like, the further along it goes, the deeper it gets into the ghost stuff and the supernatural world, the deeper it gets into surrealism, the more it gets into this idea of playing with reality and what is actually happening versus what are these people perceiving to be happening versus what is someone dreaming about that's not even real, and like which ghosts are real ghosts and which ghosts exist in people's heads because of personal reasons, their past, whatever. And it gets like very kind of slippery in terms of like, what are you really holding on to? Like, what is real here, right? I love that kind of movie. I do know that it frustrates certain people very much so. So I just wanted to put that out there so you know. Let me show you the release here. The strip, this is like a Moby strip, I think it's called. That's removable, so you can just have the clean artwork. I kind of like it. I don't know. I like the look of it. I thought about removing it, and then I left it because I thought it was kind of cool. So the booklet is here. Here's the disc. And then the reversible artwork is the Hong Kong... I think it's like the Hong Kong original poster for the film there. And the booklet is the front. Here's the back. I like this, just like this plain, this very stark kind of plain white aesthetic that the booklets have for Radiance Film. So Visible Secret and the Look of Hong Kong Horror by Gary Benison. So this, like, you know, is a lot about other Hong Kong horror films and contextualizing this movie within that, like, you know, obviously Seven Golden Vampires and various other ghost films and trends that were happening at the time that this movie came out, and just kind of like an overview of Hong Kong horror, but also references in this film. The Sixth Sense, Psycho, various other movies like that. And then the Dylan Chung essay is entitled New Millennium, Old Ghosts. And like I said, phenomenal for me, because I gained a lot of insight into the context of this film reading that essay. So what is this movie about? The main character, who is played by Eason Chan, who's this guy right here. He's very green there. I don't know how well you can see him, but he's the guy who's got the blood all over him. Oh, he's this guy here with the bucket hat on. That's Shu-Chi. And then he's got that. So he is, early in the film, he loses his job. He's like a hairdresser, and he's like kind of estranged from his brother. His mom has passed away. His dad is in a home, and they're worried that there's like some, you know, mental illness, maybe dementia type of stuff going on there. And he's just kind of down on his luck, has no money, has no girlfriend, because like lives in this kind of fog of confusion and depression. This idea that like what is the future? Like it's kind of like early to mid 20s, just kind of like looking at life and being like, what is this? And what do I even do with it? And like, why am I even here, kind of thing, right? And then he meets Shu-Chi at a nightclub, and they start dating, but she's like kind of unpredictable and flaky. And then as we find out, she sees ghosts, and then he starts seeing ghosts, and then all this kind of crazy supernatural stuff starts to happen. And there's a lot of mysteries here. Like there's a mystery about his own past and about his dad, and his brother is involved a little bit, and there's stuff about the Shu-Chi character where like he can't quite figure her out. And I don't want to say too much, because if I start revealing too much, I feel like I start giving away some of the mysteries of the film, or at least some of the things are like that are fun about like diving into this movie and kind of, but it's kind of like a drama, like angsty youth film, but it's also very much like a ghost movie, and it's also very funny. So it's like a comedy, and it's all of these things kind of swirling together, but it does have a kind of a consistent tone to it. There's a melancholy at the core of this film. Now, I will say that the film is really kind of like a spooky ghost mystery drama, but there's something at like the heart of this film. This is one of the things that really affected me so much about this movie. That's just really sad. There's like this really beautiful poetic sense of melancholy, and I think Shu Qi, her character and her performance best manifest this thing. I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is, but just like in the bones of this movie, like deep in its heart, there's a sadness to it. That's not really the focus of the film, but it's just kind of ever present, and I couldn't shake that. And like a couple days later, I watched this movie like maybe 3 days ago. I'm still feeling that, and it's this really indescribable feeling of like melancholy that just kind of like seeped into me and wouldn't go away. In terms of like appreciating this film for the metaphors, the layers of it, I mean, there's so much going on in this movie. Now, as I read in the Dylan Chung essay, which is context that I would have completely missed, 1997, obviously we have the handover of Hong Kong to China, right? In that same year, there was the Asian financial crisis. So the whole thing about like he can't find a job and he's constantly worried about where his money's coming from, he can't pay rent. This is something that like huge numbers of people, especially young people, would have been experiencing at that time because of this financial crisis, right? So, but then you have all of these metaphors of like he's living in the modern city, but he's lost and his family is falling apart. So, you know, everything that he knows, the comfort and the logic and the kind of the just like the fact that the world makes sense when you're with your family and you're in that family, and that's how you grow up and that's how you perceive things, that's like falling apart. Like his reality in a way is falling apart. He can't keep a job, his family is crumbling, and he starts seeing ghosts everywhere, right? And so it's like these young people in Hong Kong who are afraid of the future, who don't know where they're going, who don't know where their lives are going, don't know what the future holds for them, who are now seeing the ghosts of the past everywhere and struggling to move forward because of the terror of the terror they're reconciling with from the past. And there's stuff about like childhood trauma in this movie, and trying to move beyond that. So there's a lot of stuff in this film that is very clearly metaphorical. I don't think that this film is a direct metaphor for the handover or the financial crisis or anything like that. I think that this film is looking at Hong Kong culture and history, and especially young people, and even in a way like this kind of meta look at Hong Kong cinema, because Dylan Chung mentions in his essay that the film industry was in major decline at this point in time and had been for like a decade. And so it's this kind of just sense of stagnation, and like the movie in some scenes is very saturated and in other scenes seems very gray and desaturated. But the one thing that I think is kind of consistent with the color scheme throughout this movie is that it's very monotone. So even the scenes where you get really intense colors, you tend to get like one really intense color, right? Like be it a blue or a green or something. There's a lot of green in this film. And so it's this sense of just like the details and the vibrancy of something being lost, and these people just kind of floundering around, not really knowing what to do. And there's a lot of stuff in here about the relationship between Hong Kong and mainland China. Like there's a house of prostitution, a house of ill repute, a bordello, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of like on the same street where one of the characters lives, so they like walk past it a couple times in the movie. And there's a sign outside that says like northern ladies freshly arrived or something like that, right? Obviously like a direct reference to prostitutes from mainland China. And you have one of the ghosts came from China and talks about how much, one of the ghosts that they run into, like how much she sacrificed to come to Hong Kong, and what did it ultimately mean in the end, and what did they get from it, and what it's really interesting. You also have this element of this film where the ghosts are possessing people. So there are some ghosts which are actual like people who have died and you see their ghosts, but in a lot of instances it's characters in the film who get possessed by ghosts. So it's people being taken over by the past in a way and not being able to escape the past, but the past not providing a path forward, right? So again, you get into all of these there's so many metaphors in this film, and I think a lot of them are really well handled. There's even some that I think I kind of miss. Like there's the main character's family used to run like a snake restaurant, and there's a scene where they run into a snake and like he's afraid of snakes, and I don't know the significance of snakes in the culture of Hong Kong or what it might mean in the context of this film, but that's very obviously a metaphor too. So there's a lot of stuff going on metaphorically in this film. I do want to talk about why this movie affected me so much personally, because I think that's important to point out so that you have like the full context for my relationship with this film. So a lot of this movie is about loss and about people who are just really sad because they feel this really incredible sense of like something key missing from the world, right? When I was a kid, I lost like a member of my immediate family, right? When I was almost 11 years old. And so being 10, I was 10, being 10 years old and a very sudden, you basically have to acknowledge the impermanence of all things and your own mortality and that of everyone else you know. You're forced to when something like that happens, when someone passes away pretty quickly without a lot of anticipation. And it just fundamentally kind of changes the way that you exist, obviously in the short term, but it never really goes away, right? Even though you get used to it or you're not always thinking about it, it's always there, right? And just the way that just like I said, there's just something at the core of this film that really honestly and accurately depicts what it's like to have that sense of something being missing or wrong, or like this tragedy that can never truly be overcome even though it's been moved past, right? And so for that reason, like I think a lot of movies that deal with topics of loss, of like families falling apart, of death, of confusion, of those types of things, um I think a lot of those movies are not particularly truthful or accurate or honest, and I found this movie to be very much all of those things. So I found it very um, affecting for that reason. The other thing is that I have, at various points in my life, I have had like extended periods where I have night terrors, right? Which is where it's also called sleep paralysis, where your mind is awake but your body can't move, and you feel. I've had different manifestations of it. I've had like the kind of like the classic one that if you Google like night terrors or sleep paralysis, you'll see like paintings and drawings of like someone lying flat and like a demon like sitting on their chest. Like I've had that experience before where you feel like this evil oppressive thing is like right there and it's like crushing you. I've also had like a variation of it where it feels like there's like something that's not human like right kind of next to you, like a ghost almost, right? And it gives you this really unsettling feeling of like what you understand as reality not being real, right? And for whatever reason, when I was watching this film, I had this sense of like, it felt really accurate. Like I've never seen an actual ghost before, right? And I've never really thought too hard about whether or not I believe in these things, right? And I've never like genuinely experienced like, oh no, the chair just moved, Satan must be in the room. But like, I have had that, and I know there are scientific explanations for night terrors and sleep paralysis, but that doesn't change the emotional feeling that you get when you experience it, right? Something about the way that ghosts and possession and the tension between the natural world and the supernatural world and the ways in which they collide. Something about the way it's depicted in this film and the ambiance of this movie and the way that the people who experience the supernatural react to it, and in the way it's almost like dreamlike and confusing, and like that felt very true and accurate to my experience of having these night terror episodes where you genuinely like it. Even if I don't believe in ghosts, you believe in that moment there's a ghost like right next to you, and there's something about this movie that really hit that for me, and it felt really true to that experience. So for two different reasons, I had a very profound emotional connection to this film, and it really kind of blew me away. But then I also think, like as a writer, like I said, I do think that you can make an easy argument that one of the big reveals at the end is a little bit obvious and also there for a couple key points of logic doesn't totally make sense. I didn't really care because I thought it worked emotionally and thematically, especially thematically. There's one particular spoiler I can't give away here um, that reveals a huge metaphor at the heart of this film that I thought was really well handled. But I like the main like it's an entertaining film. It's a funny film. It's a really well shot film. It's got some really cool imagery in it. It's spooky. It's fun. It's a great Halloween watch. But like I said, I mean, there's one scene in this movie where Shu Qi and Eason Chen are just sitting on a boat. They've gone out to this like kind of beach resort type of place with their friends for like a weekend, and they're on the boat coming back into the main part of Hong Kong, and they're just sitting there talking, and it's just one shot slowly pushing in on them as the boat is moving, and they're sitting in these like plastic chairs on this deck just talking, and just the way they hold themselves, their tone of voice, the kind of the lyricism of like the scenery, the grayness, the water, it just struck me as being so sad in this very poetic and beautiful way. So the movie is Visible Secrets. Obviously, I loved this movie. I highly recommend it. It's not for everyone. I cannot emphasize that enough, but it was for me. It's the Radiance Films release. My name is Will. You are watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society, and we will see you next time.